While juvenile incarceration rates have been decreasing, rates of incarcerated girls have either stayed the same or increased. In response, the Kitsap County Girls Court opened in June of 2019. It's the state's first court system providing service just for girls. RadioActive's Lila Shroff has more.
All rise, court's now in session.
I'm sitting in a small courtroom in Kitsap County, but despite the judicial setting, the atmosphere is light. People are chatty, greeting one another with hugs and laughter, and a snack cart sits by the door. This is the Kitsap County Girls Court.
After having a bad day or something, knowing that I'm going to girls' court kind of put me in a better mood.
That's 16-year-old Hannah Rayfield. She's one of just over 20 girls who the program has touched since opening last year.
You don't feel like somebody who's on probation. You feel like someone who is part of a family.
After youth like Hannah are charged and convicted with a crime, they often serve a period of probation. This means that they can remain in their communities, but under court supervision. At Girls Court, the probation experience is different. Rachel Sotley, the CEO of the Center for Children's Youth and Justice, or CCYJ, explained it to me.
It recognizes the needs of girls are very different than the needs of boys. Girls have greater mental health and medical needs and trauma indicators. And when their needs go unmet, they are at higher risk for recidivating over and over again.
Recidivating is the process of relapsing back into the justice system after an initial encounter. And for girls whose needs go unmet, it can become a huge issue. To address this, the Girls Court operates with a trauma-informed approach. This means understanding the root of the complex issues that land these girls in the justice system in the first place.
What is underneath all of this trauma and all of these adverse childhood experiences is love and be loved and know and be known in the absence of community. And that this community doesn't want that young person to miss out. That is extraordinary.
From group tie-dye projects to volunteering, Girls Court also emphasizes the importance of building relationships with local communities and each other. And the good news is, it seems to be working. Girls Court graduate Hannah Rayfield says the experience doesn't fit one's typical idea of the courtroom.
I see the person that's name being called perk up, and this goes up there with a huge smile, and then the judge just like, so how was your weekend? Highs and lows. And then I know when I'm sitting there and I get my name called, my heart dropped with excitement.
When things were tough financially, Hannah would use her own money to pay for bus fares to get to Girls Court. And she also told me something that's pretty rare for people involved in the justice system.
My probation officer, she was like a family member to me and everything. Oh, I miss her so much.
The president of CCYJ, Rachel Sotley, also witnessed the impact of the Girls Court. She described to me an interaction with a graduating member reflecting on her experience.
She said, for the first time in my life, I'm confident with who I am. And I've been able to develop trusting relationships that I've never been able to develop in my life. And I have a community that cares about me. And I'm sitting there going, the youth legal justice system just produced an outcome where a young person, high risk, very complex, multi-system impacted, left feeling confident and connected and trusting of others. That's magical.
Oh, no. So that was close to home, right?
Everyone I spoke to, from Rachel to Hannah to the Girls Court team, voiced hope that someday this model would be expanded across the state or nation, or even to include a boys' court. After all, every youth should have the chance to pursue their dreams. For RadioActive, I'm Lila Shroff. All in-person interviews were conducted prior to the stay-at-home order.
This next story might not be appropriate for all listeners. On a single day in King County, more than 1,000 children under the age of 18 are sex trafficked. That's according to one local source. And the dangers of getting forced into online sex trafficking are something that everyday teenagers are warning each other about online. RadioActive's Jadenne Radoc Cabahug has more.
As I'm scrolling through TikTok, I see some trending dances, memes, and then I stumble across this.
PSA about sex trafficking in my area, north of Seattle.
It's a homemade video from a teen in Seattle. Teens are sharing posts like this to make sure other teens don't become a victim of sex trafficking. The photos and videos are spreading like wildfire online, with tens of thousands of retweets, likes, and shares. One of the most common posts is about zip ties on cars. It has photos of zip ties attached to side view mirrors and windshield wipers. The caption reads, "If you see this on your vehicle, leave immediately. Traffickers are doing this to distract and kidnap you." But this is not true.
That absolutely is not an accurate portrayal of sex trafficking.
Audrey Badke is a programs manager at the Seattle organization REST. It stands for Real Escape from the Sex Trade. She told me the reality is way different than what's being posted online.
When we look at individuals that have experienced trafficking, the majority of times they are recruited by somebody who builds trust with them. It rarely is a stranger on the street that comes and grabs an individual and puts them into the sex trafficking ring.
While things like that do happen, Badke says most of the time it starts with the victim meeting a man
and him becoming my boyfriend, becoming somebody that I trust, somebody that I love, somebody that I want to be with and please.
And this is what happened, verbatim, to someone else I talked to. She's a former sex trafficking survivor, now in her early 40s. We're not saying her name to protect her. At a young age, she was sexually abused by a family member, then taken from her parents and put into foster care.
Shortly after, I ended up meeting a pimp out there on 3rd Avenue in Pike, and that's how it all started.
At the time, she felt abandoned, like her parents didn't want her. She got into the pimp's car, and he took her to lunch and shopping.
He got to know me and my backstory, my life, and created a story, a fairy tale story of, oh, it's going to be me and you against the world, and we're going to make so much money, and basically sold me on a dream of love and belonging.
But instead, within 2 weeks, she was on Pacific Highway and Aurora Avenue, being forced to have sex for money. That's known as being sex trafficked, and the survivor calls it being raped. She says she was lied to and used for the next 7 years, and it ended when the FBI arrested her. She got out of the life, as it's known. She now has a regular job. The survivor is actively working with a therapist and healing. I was surprised by her story. It happened over many years versus being instantly thrown into a van. The expert I talked to earlier, Audrey Badke, also says those online posts I saw could do real damage to teens because they're not true.
For example, if you are concerned about predators following you in a store, you won't worry about the people that you let into your life on social media.
She says if you're watching for victims with duct tape on their mouths, you won't notice the silent pleas of help from friends, classmates, or loved ones. Another thing I learned was people at risk for being sex trafficked are foster kids and people of color. Both are true for our former survivor. The reality of sex trafficking is so different from the social media warning posts that teens share. Instead, the world of pimps, buyers, and victims is a lot more quiet and hidden in plain sight. For RadioActive, Jadenne, Radoc, Cabahug.